first Joyce visit, and he will tell us about the structure uh, of pathways. His speech title is Pathway. What is in pathway? George, up to you.
Can you make me presenter, please? I'm using slides.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
All right. So hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oops. All right. I say the trick here. All right. It's been a while since I used GoToMeeting. I'll switch back to my camera for just a moment. If my camera will come back.
Your camera was actually up while your slides were up.
Oh, okay, very good. Anyway, so District 57 was the first district to go on to Pathways as the first pilot district. District 27 is also in pilot. District 57 will follow shortly. We got to work closely with headquarters as they finished defining the program, to be quite honest about it, and encountered some challenges. But with the benefit of several months now, we've begun to understand how the program really works and what's in it. I tend to get a few kind of questions from people. One is, what is in Pathways? How does it differ from our current program? The second one is, how do I use the online features? How do they work? And the third one is, from club officer typically, is how do I do my job as an officer? How does DCP work, etc.? Today, I'm going to basically answer the question, what's in Pathways and how does it differ? Because until you actually go onto Pathways and see the screens, I don't think screenshots help all that much. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Today, whenever. Pathways up close. Central question I'm going to start with is, what is the difference between our current program and Pathways? And oh, by the way, at the end of the slide, the last slide, I'm going to show you how you can download this presentation. So take whatever notes you want to, but I am making the PowerPoint available to you. So first of all, let's look at our current program. The current program grew up piece at a time. It began to take on something like its current form in about the 1970s and 1980s. It was not a designed program. It grew organically and things were added onto it. The last thing that added onto it was the competent leader just a few years ago. We should all know this, but let's just go through it. How does it work? How do you earn awards? First, you complete the competent communication, and we're working on the communications track here. You do 2 more advanced manuals. It's the bronze. You do 2 more advanced manuals and education programs that get you the silver, 2 more advanced manuals, and some additional duties, and you get the Speechcraft. And it's worth pointing out at this point that when you do an advanced manual, you must do all 5 of them for credit, even though people have sometimes said they'd like to pick one from here and one from there and one from a different manual. And that's our communications track. On the leadership side, we have our Competent Leadership Manual, the most recent change to the program. The Advanced Leader Bronze, which is basically serving as club officer, plus certain additional requirements. And then for what most people is the big jump, Advanced Leader Silver, requiring district officer, a club sponsor, mentor, coach, and a high-performance leadership. Do all of those things, and you attain the DTM. So now the question we ask is, what is the difference in Pathways? So I'm going to show you the equivalent chart. I will tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, this is not a headquarters chart. They have yet to produce such a chart. So this is George's chart. I built it using the requirements they have posted to us, but it is my own graphics and will undoubtedly someday be replaced by headquarters. We start as a new member, and let's again imagine that this new member is looking to go all the way to BTM. What do? Well, they first have to complete one path. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. Then they complete a second path. And they need to serve as a club sponsor, or do a speechcraft, or do a youth leadership program. Sound familiar, doesn't it? They need to be a club mentor or a club coach. You see, these are familiar requirements, although they are rearranged a bit. They need to serve as a club officer. They need to serve as a district officer. And do one more thing. They need to complete the DTM project. Those of you who have had access to the Chief Ambassador webinars know this was called the Capstone Project at one time with the DTM. If you complete all those, you are DTM. DTM is still the highest name, it's still that's what it's called. Let's go through these in more detail. First of all, you're going to complete 2 paths out of the 10 available. Each path has 5 levels. They're all structured exactly the same way, 5 levels. The first 3 levels of those paths are primarily communications projects. It is mostly speech projects. A couple of exceptions here and there, but mostly. Levels 4 and 5 are substantially more complex, and some of the projects are more communications oriented, and some of them are more leadership, or shall we say, project oriented. There are 10 paths available. There are various resources you can go to find out more about these. You can tell a lot about them just by the names of them. We're going to pick a couple of them just as an example. And I'm going to pick Presentation Mastery and Innovative Planning. And of course, it's totally and completely a coincidence that these are the 2 first paths that I myself picked to go through. But the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you level by level for those 2 paths what the differences are. Why aren't I going to show you all 10? Because the screen is just not wide enough, folks. So level 1, called Mastering Fundamentals, it is identical for all paths. It is exactly the same. We have an icebreaker. It's written up differently. It's got different words. It has more resources to call on, but it is the icebreaker we know and love. Evaluation and feedback is an interesting project in which you will give 2 speeches and do an evaluator role. This is designed to get new members up to speed. Speaking, receiving feedback, and giving feedback quite quickly. And then you'll do a researching and presenting, which you might say looks a bit familiar. All in all, there's 4 speeches in these 3 projects. One of the principles here is one project does not necessarily equal 1 speech, although, frankly, it usually does. Let's go on to level 2. Level 2 they call Learning Your Style. And again, I am comparing the Presentation Mastery path to the Innovative Planning path. All the projects in level 2 are also required, although they are somewhat different for the paths. In Presentation Mastery, you will do Understanding Your Communication Style. In Innovative Planning, you will do a different project, somewhat related, called Understanding Your Leadership Style. In Presentation Mastery, you also have to complete Effective Body Language. Sounds a little familiar, like the Body Language project from the CC manual, doesn't it? In fact, you'll find as you go through pathways that they have drawn upon our current program quite a bit. Many of the projects are taken from, or similar to, or based on projects we already have. Others are completely new and redone. Innovative Planning, you'll do Connect with Your Audience. Both of them will do Introduction to Toastmasters Mentoring. Mentoring is a much bigger part of the Pathways program. There's more emphasis. Even though we have mentoring in our current program, we even have a mentoring manual, there is a lot more emphasis on it here. Level 3, it's starting to get interesting now. Again, I'm going to compare the required and electives in presentation mastery project or path with those on the innovative planning project. Presentation mastery, the required project is persuasive speaking. In innovative planning, the required project is present a proposal. You're seeing they're starting to diverge here. If you're working on the presentation path, we're going to have you do something strictly related to presentations. If you're working on planning, guess what? We're going to have you do something with planning a project, which is submit a proposal. Now, both paths, in fact, all paths have two electives. At level 3, all paths have two electives. The electives are pretty much the same across all the paths with minor differences. The requireds are different across all the paths. The electives are the same. And here are the electives. It's about a dozen to choose from. And so you can, in your level, whatever level you choose, you do the requireds, which is the focus. But I think you can see by looking just at the titles and names of the electives that you get quite a bit of variety. In fact, you can take a given path and you can tilt it or point it more in one direction or the other based on what paths you choose. Let's just look at a couple of examples of these. Creating visual aids sure sounds like something from the CC. Vocal variety, descriptive language, effective body language, make connections through networking. That's a different kind of project. Prepare for an interview. And here in Witty Storytellers, we have to mention connect with storytelling as one option. If you analyze these, you'll see that some of these look like they're similar to CC projects. Most of these look like they're similar to one or another of the advanced manuals that we have, and there's some that are simply new. Active listening is interesting. There is no speech for active listening. You are table topics master. That's your role. Using presentation software. So there's quite a few choices here. Level 4, it starts to get interesting and definitely more complex. Again, I'm going to compare presentation mastery path to the innovative planning path. The required project at level 4 for presentation mastery is managing a difficult audience. This is somewhat similar to this a project like that in speeches by management. In innovative planning, there's a completely different kind of project which is manage product successfully. This is an example of a project where you will do some kind of leadership activity. You need to set up a modest project of some type with multiple other people involved, work the project, and then report back. Nowhere near as complex as an HPL, but nevertheless, it will exercise your project management skills. Electives, of course, we have electives. Now we have one elective, and again, all paths, all 10 paths, have one elective you can choose at level 4. About 8 of them here. These are more complex projects. Create a podcast. You're required to offline create 60 minutes, 60 minutes of podcast. I think it's 7 or 8 different sessions. And then for your speech, you report back. You play a couple of them, and you report back in the meeting. Manage online meetings. I did this one recently. You're required to manage an online meeting. You're in an online club. This is a no-brainer. It's an easy one for you to do. Building a social media presence. You can see we're diverging a little bit from strictly speaking skills. These are a mix of speaking and leadership skills, and they're designed to build skills in the member. One of the criteria the staff told us when they're coming up with a project is how will this project help a member in their career, in real life, in their volunteer organizations? That's the question. Tonight, I am with this project, I am doing the question and answer session. Level 5, this is the top level in each path. Again, let's look at what's involved. Presentation mastery, you do prepare to speak professionally. This is a 20-minute presentation, as well as a project that's in all paths called Reflect on Your Path. Look back on everything you did, apply the skills you learned to a presentation. In innovative planning, the high performance leadership project is required. This is written up a different way. It has more resources available, but basically it is the HPL that if you've got a DTM that you know about. Again, reflect on your path. Electives, again, all paths have choose one elective. And we have some, again, rather substantial projects. Leading in your volunteer organization. In some organization, which could be Toastmasters or another volunteer organization, you take a leadership position for at least 6 months. And then there's some requirements how you report back. 6 months. Lessons learned. Ethical leadership is a complex project involving establishing and dating your values and then presenting it. Speak professionally. Here's an interesting example. Prepare to speak professionally is a required for presentation mastery, so it doesn't actually appear as an elective for presentation mastery, but I've just simplified it the way I showed it here. Also note that high performance leadership is an option in the paths where it's not required. 3 of the paths in Pathway require the high performance leadership. The other 7 all have high performance leadership as an option. So let's roll it up, consider a perspective on this. Pathways program per se is new, but it's very definitely based on familiar concepts and in many cases familiar projects. They have made good use of the heritage of education material we have, even as they've added additional things. So just comparing with the current program, a member earns recognition for each of 7 awards, plus the DTM. They pick from, in addition to the CC manual, 6 of the 15 advanced manuals. If you pick an advanced manual, you will do all 5 in there to get credit. We have distinctly separate communications and leadership track, which in over Toastmaster history were added at different times, different ways. And this program expires in roughly 3 years. Technically, will go on for 2 years after the last district has been brought up on Pathways. So we're estimating that's roughly 3, probably a little bit more than 3 years. Up until that time, you can be working on the current program. After that, no new awards can be filed on the new program, on the current program. Pathways, we earn recognition more often. We earn recognition for each one of those levels, so that's 10 levels plus the DTM. The net effect is that a new member coming in will be recognized for achievements sooner in Pathways than they will in the current program. We have about 50 projects to choose from, many choices. As you can see, there's quite a bit of flexibility on what project to choose regardless of paths. And one thing we've been told by headquarters, there are more projects coming. These 50 are simply the first set. This is not the whole program. They are working on additional projects, so we can expect the options available to us to grow over time. Communications and leadership are completely integrated together. There's no such thing as separate manuals, simply these paths with their requireds and their electives. And this is the new long-term program. Once your district launches on Pathways, whether it is a pilot or one of the mainstream launches, any members who join Toastmasters after your district launches will exclusively be on Pathways. Whereas members who were members of Toastmasters prior to your district going on Pathways have the choice of working on the current program, Pathways, or both together. Either one of those can be done. And I promised you a link. I have posted a lot of Pathways information on our District 57 website. If you browse over there to districtd57tm.org, select the Pathways section, I have a bunch of files there. This file, this PowerPoint, is about halfway down the page, and it's called Pathways Up Close Spring Conference 2017, with very minor changes. So with that, I conclude the, come on, George. I conclude the slide portion of the presentation, and I'm going to open up to Q&A. Is someone going to moderate that, or am I going to moderate that?
You should close your screen so you can see better. Could you close your screen, George?
Okay, I will do that. Still showing?
No, it is still the screen.
I'm sorry, what do you need me to do?
The presentation screen's still on.
Really? I just killed it up. Okay, let's see. All right, how about that?
Yes.
It's gone.
There we go.
All right, thank you. You think I didn't know anything about online clubs, would you?
Thank you, George. It was great.
You conduct the question and answers, George? Or do you want me to do it?
Let's see. We have some questions already on the side.
And I've got a couple if you're interested.
Let's just do them verbally rather than me squinting down here at the chat box. So take it one at a time. Go ahead.
So Debbie.
Okay.
Come on.
So first off, George, with the link that you provided, does that require a password to access it?
It does not. Headquarters has been very generous to us and allowed us to post some things that at one point they considered rather confidential. But for example, one of the things that's there is the presentation that Pathways Guide will give the clubs.
Oh, excellent.
You can preview that. Yeah. There's a number of items there.
My next question is, in the current program, you can be working on your CC manual and your AL or your AB at the same time. Do you have that potential with Pathways?
Sort of. Here's the story. You may have heard it. In Pathways, staff believes strongly, I might point out, that we should be doing the program sequentially, in order. They believe that so strongly they won't even show you later levels until you've completed the earlier ones. However, you can be working on more than one path at the same time. So you can get two paths and you can be working on both of them and at whatever pace you want to. In fact, we asked the question, is there any limit on the number of paths we can have open? And the answer is no. Well, yes, 10. That's all the paths there are.
Okay, and then I have one final question. Does the role of ambassador, I know the Pathways Guide is equivalent or being transferred to part of the ALS. Is an ambassador also quantify into the DTM transition at the moment?
Very recently, yes. They said that ambassadors, if they continue in the program and complete certain requirements, will also earn the district service credit. And that's quite recent. We have no details on that.
No details yet. Okay, thank you. That's it for me. I will eagerly listen to everybody else now. Thank you.
Michelle, you got on mute.
There you are. Okay, I was double mute. Okay, I have a question I'm reading for Charles. He's asking you, is there on average, how long would it take if somebody was actively pursuing from the start to DTM? And I could guess what your answer is, but anyway, that's the question.
How long would it take? Well, of course, the answer is it varies.
Yes.
But let's say we're talking about someone who's in a weekly club and they're quite active. Each path has 14 projects. On average, not 100%, but on average, that's about 14 speeches. So there's 14 meetings. So there's 28 meetings for a very aggressive person. However, at level 5, some of the projects are very involved. You heard me mention one that requires a 6-month effort as a leadership position. And the requirements on district officer are the same 1 year. They've increased the requirements for the club officer. Today, in today's DTM, or the ALB, 6 months is sufficient service. It is now 1 year, although it can be 2 non-contiguous 6-month projects. So I would say it may be slightly shorter time to get a DTM in the new program than the current one, but I don't think it's really going to change much because of the complexity of those level 4s and level 5s.
Thank you.
Next.
Guys, I have a question. At this point, you can be an ambassador. You can also become a pathway guide. But then there is a need also for the ambassador. If you are going for the guide, will those two conflict or will they overlap?
Let me take a moment to talk about that. Toastmasters created the new position of a guide as someone who is capable of technically supporting their clubs along with doing presentations. I don't know about your district, but in my district, some of the folks that made good ambassadors are going out and giving a nice story about the revised education program were by their own admission were incapable of technically supporting their clubs. However, for our district, for District 57, every one of our guides is also a pathway. Every ambassador and guide are the same people. So everyone went to a club wearing 2 hats. This is ideal. Here's why. Otherwise, the ambassador and the guide have to coordinate their schedules and the club schedules to go out to visit the club. And the ambassador doesn't have much of a role, but they had to be there. So I highly recommend you do the same thing in your district when it comes to your turn. It's not required. They have set it up so the ambassador can get separate credit. But I tell you, the guides are going to thank you if you can let them be ambassadors too.
I did register for both already. But for the guide, you have to wait.
I'm sorry?
To be guide, you have to wait until the pathway nears your own district. You
Yes.
cannot be named. And you cannot
Right.
discover it.
But ambassador cannot earn that district credit until the same time that the guide does. Because they have to be with the program during the launch. So yes, many of us are ambassadors. I was an ambassador for day 1. After the first year, we quickly quit doing anything because we did not want to waste the time of our clubs telling the silly futures that we were to go out and tell them.
There is a problem. We hear echo. So I would like everyone who is not speaking to close his mic so we don't hear someone twice. Zaldi, how we stand this time for question and answer?
Okay, did I address your question, Julie?
Yes, I would like to know if we still have time for question and answers or if the time is up. From Zaldi or from you?
That's your call. I'm available as long as you want me to be here.
Julie, I think Zaldi's having internet. Oh, there, he's back. Zaldi, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, and I also have a question.
Yes.
I think people have to do 10 icebreakers.
I didn't understand the question.
I just like them to. There are 10 facts, and if you're going to do all of them, you're going to have to work on 10 icebreakers. Now, how will each icebreaker be different from each other?
Well, Zaldi, let me give you my own story. Tonight at my home club meeting, I just completed my 15th icebreaker. My 15th icebreaker. 13 of them in the current program, 2 of them in Pathways. I had no trouble coming up with something different to talk about, and you're an experienced member. I think you won't have any trouble either.
Ellen, do you have a question?
Hi there.
Hi.
I needed to first unlock my microphone. Actually, I'm following every ounce of information online. Thank you very much, George, for providing it. And I got a lot of questions, but it more concerns our district when to start with the pathways guides and what do the ambassadors do. And I still have to figure out the difference, the true difference between the pathways guides and the ambassadors. I know what the pathways guides are going to do very specifically, but to have the ambassadors accompany them and support them in a way, that is something I still have to figure out, and it's not very clear yet.
Which rollout are you in? Do you have an estimate of when you'll roll out?
It's the second rollout next year, 2018. So I hope at spring next year.
One thing I want to mention is headquarters is very supportive. They know this is a new program. They know there's so many things. When your district comes up to roll out, you're going to get access to staff directly. You're going to have the ability to ask questions directly. They have a very good organized support structure for you to submit your questions to. We've been very, very happy with support we got from staff on this new program.
That's great. Actually, I wait for appointing pathways guides until I get the announcement from Toastmasters International for the specific date.
Right. Is Paul still online? Paul, what?
Paul is here.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Paul, I just since you are the other district that is on pilot right now, I just want to ask you what your district's experiences have been with Pathways so far.
I think you really reflected it well. I really tried to get all of my ambassadors to become guides because the idea of coordination between 2 people in a club is so much more difficult than 1 person. So many of our ambassadors became guides. However, there are a couple of guides that were not ambassadors. It's working out fine, but the absolute easiest way is when the ambassador becomes a guide. The issue that I see so far with the rollout is that people are hesitant to get started for whatever reason. I think there are 2 kinds of people in the world. They're the kind of people when they're traveling, they plan everything. They look at all of the tourist guides. They know what they're going to do every minute when they get to where they're going. And there are other people who like to wander and just uncover things and discover things. And figuring out how to get both of those kinds of people involved early is important because once you get involved and you start the program, it's really exciting. But it takes that initial push to get going. And if people want to sit back and say, let's wait for a while and see how it goes with others, you don't get that critical mass or the momentum. So I would really encourage people to think about how do we promote the program in a way to get people to start early. And that, by the way, is one of the jobs of the ambassador. The ambassador's out promoting the program and still trying to encourage people to enroll. That's maybe one of the big differences between the guides who are there for training and the ambassadors who are primarily promotion. Thanks for the George.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
I have a very relevant question, I think. I have been converted to Pathways during George's presentation. Thank you very much, George. And I want to plunge into it immediately, like today. And my question is, should I complete, or should a person complete DTM in the current program and then, plunge into Pathways, or can I find a Pathways club like Julie did, like Brian did, and just start it from zero and go to DTM? What do you think?
Every member is going to make that choice. Paul mentioned that not everyone had jumped onto it. And aside from people that just don't like change, there's people that are partway through this manual or that manual, or they're close to the DTM, and I can't really fault them for wanting to stick with the program. Others, like Isabella, are saying, I really jump into this. If you are really, really focused on the award, the DTM, and it's a reasonable thing to be focused on, you've only got 3 years to complete the DTM in the current program, or you'll have to start over anyway. So if you're close, so you're well through the advanced communications, and I would say maybe you want to go ahead and try to do the DTM on the current program. But I assure you, you will be happy with Pathways if you decide to switch. So it is so personal a decision. I can't make a recommendation.
I immediately have a second question. Can I do both? While I'm doing the current one, can I already join the new one?
You can work on both Pathways and the current program simultaneously. Is that the question?
No,
Yes.
the question was if she can do normal, old kind of Toastmaster and finish and at the same time do Pathways.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
think so. But Svetlana, knowing you and experienced now Pathways, I think you really would learn for you what you want to do for your job, for your future, a lot more going to Pathway now, as soon as you can. Now, I would like to thank very much George and close the question and answers. And we would like to have now our second speech, which will be experiencing Pathway, because Paul will tell us a story, a speech from the level 2 of Pathways. And we
Thank you,
will.
Julie. Fellow Toastmasters, am I on?
Yes, you are on.
Can you hear me? Fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests and friends from all around the world. I am older than dirt, and I learned that when I started to think about my childhood, and I realized that when I was in school, we still had music programs in our school, and that has certainly changed. My music teacher was named Irma Watts. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. She was also a very ample person. When she sat on a piano bench, she filled the entire piano bench and with some overflow. But she was a wonderful piano player. Her music was her life. Her world revolved around music. And one of her passions was to tell everyone that she encountered, including, of course, us students, that the world revolved around 3 B's: Brahms, Beethoven, and Bach. But this was in the 1950s, the beginning of the rock and roll era. So we students also thought the world revolved around 3 B's. But those were different B's. They were the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Byrds. I don't know how many of you know about the Byrds. The Byrds was kind of a folk rock group that I loved because I'm from southern Indiana. In Indiana, we're very countrified, hillbillies, and that folk rock genre was just perfect for me. But there was also something else about the Byrds. They had a song, Turn, Turn, Turn. It was a song written by Pete Seeger, the very famous folk singer. The words, very beautiful words, meaningful words, came right out of the Holy Bible. To everything there's a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Now, what a wonderful song that is for many different reasons. I'm talking about all of this because that song has sort of guided my pathway in communication since I joined Toastmasters. It's a simple verse, but it means a lot. Every season, there is for every season. The season is the audience. You have to know when you're speaking about the audience. Is the audience in winter or spring or summer or fall? When you know where the audience is, you can shape what you say, how you say it, to reach that particular audience. There's also then, for every season, there's a purpose. When we're speaking, we always have to know what our purpose is. Whether we're speaking to one person or 10,000 people, we have to have clear in our own mind what the purpose of the speech is. There's a time for every season, and there's a time for every speaker. Of course, DTM means perhaps don't time me. It's okay to alter, if you would like, the time. However, once you have an allotted time, you should stick within that time. You should also take the time to prepare adequately so you don't waste the time of your audience. But finally, in this song by the Byrds, they used a particular phrase: to everything, turn, turn, turn. There's a season, turn, turn, turn. A time for every purpose under heaven. The turn, turn, turn is really important because when we're speaking, we might be in a certain mode or a certain feeling. We might think of a certain communication style when we're preparing a speech. However, we have to be able to turn. We have to be flexible. We have to have the ability to adjust to the situation we're in. We might encounter a really large room or a really small room, a big audience or a small audience, a stage, a microphone, or perhaps we need a microphone and there's none there. So we need to be able to be flexible in both what we're saying and how we're saying it. So this song has been, in a sense, my philosophy, my guiding star as a Toastmaster. And there's also something else. With Mrs. Watts, my music teacher, if I were with her, I would play Minuet in G, because that is her world and that would be my music style. But if I were with my friends, I would play something like Roll Over Beethoven by Chuck Berry, because I'm in a different group. So you always vary your style depending on who you're with. So when we take level 2 of that presentation masteries, know your communication style, you start by taking an assessment. I took the assessment, and there are 4 areas that you're scored on. And Julie, perhaps we can put up the graphic at this point. When you take the assessment, you're rated on 4 different qualities or 4 different communication styles.
Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect. So the first is called the direct style. And if you see, I've actually put a face with the style, and this is just my own playful way of doing this. I have Alfred Hitchcock there as the direct style, because Alfred Hitchcock is a person who would just give a command and expect everyone to follow it. And the people who have the direct style are very decisive, they're very confident, and they're results oriented, and they basically give orders and expect people to follow. The initiating style is a little different. I have there Bill Gates. Was very knowledgeable, but they also try to interact with the audience and bring them in. They tend to be enthusiastic, energetic, and spontaneous. The third is they call it the supportive style, and I have Oprah there because she often interacts with the audience in really wonderful ways. The supportive people tend to be calm, steady, and very sincere in what they do. And the final is the analytical. I have Einstein there because they're precise, they're exact, and they tend to be very cautious in their communication style. So those are the 4 areas. When I scored on the assessment, I scored really high on direct, initiating, and supportive. So I have 3 basic styles that I share. Most often people have one style that's predominant. I have all three of those, and I scored very low on analytical. In doing this, I noticed something. My scores on this pathway speech style was very similar to the scores on what is called the DISC personality profile. If you work in psychology, you know there's two great personality profiles that psychologists use. One is called the Myers-Briggs. Probably many of you have taken the Myers-Briggs. And the other is the DISC. And when I compared my results and then looked at the descriptors for the pathway speech styles assessment, I discovered that they're almost the same as the DISC, just a change in wording. So the direct is called the dominant style, the initiating is called the influential style, the supportive is called the steadiness style, and the analytical, the compliance style. But all of the descriptors are the same. So if you're really interested in communication styles and you're involved in this particular project, you can not only go to all of the resources that Pathway offers, all of the tutorials that Pathways offers, you can also look at DISC, take that personality assessment online, and have access to a lot of different information about your personality profile and your speech profile. In fact, if you have a personality profile that's very different than your communication style, you'll probably have a problem. But for me, they are perfectly aligned with the DISC and the personality profile. Now, the question that many people have is, within this world of Twitter, very short tweets, short text messaging, do you really need to be concerned anymore about communication style? My sense is that if you communicate face-to-face with other people, and I hope that all of us still do that, you will always have success if you know what your communication style is, and if you use that communication style, including being fluid and going between and among communication styles for the right situation. On the other hand, if you don't know your communication style, you tend to be very rigid in just one style. So this project for me has been very useful in understanding all four of those communication styles and learning when to use one style or another. Julie did a wonderful speech on how to use communication styles and how that impacts your success in communicating with others. So what I would say, when you take this project, you will come out better understanding what your style is and how to use it. And I see the red light. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I am not sure I told when I introduced Paul that not only he was the one who succeeded to make the District 27 pilot, but he's also chief ambassador of this project in his district and a wonderful storyteller. Thank you.
Thank you.